I wish you could step off from that ledge, my friend. You could cut ties with all of those lies that you've been living in. And if you do not wish to see me again, I would understand. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special stream that we are sharing for both Mr. B Chats England Cricket and the Coach's Corner. A very solemn sort of series stream this is, and I'm really thankful to all those of you who will be joining in. I do have a guest in the background. I will introduce him, but for now, let me welcome all of you to both channels and say, let's get this show on the road, and it is going to be quite solemn. Well, hello, people, and the title of the stream says it all. I'm just trying to take a look and see if I can't find a special background that Mr. B made. Obviously, in memory of this, and I'm sure he did. Yep, this is what he did. Just trying to make sure I can. Okay, so for some reason the background isn't available, but obviously, we are dedicating this stream, of course, to the life of Graham Thorpe. A look back on the career of an England legend who tragically took his life. And his death was, of course, announced on the Monday of the 5th of August, the 4th, I should say. But we found out, of course, tragically, yeah, it was on the 5th that it was announced. I stand corrected. But we tragically found out a week later that his death was a suicide. And obviously, one of the reasons why it's affected me quite personally is that as an England fan, as was my guest, whom I'm going to bring on soon, we were both big fans of him. And we always knew him as someone who enjoyed playing for England, who had a bubbly side to him, but also, as we will now find out, take a look and see how he was in many ways affected. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest, someone who's making a wonderfully welcome return to the Coach's Corner, but making his debut, in fact, on Mr. B Chats England Cricket. Someone who I look up to very highly as a fan of both cricket and football, someone with whom I've done a few streams, shared many a conversation on Instagram, and someone who absolutely loves his cricket, despite football being his first love. The legend, the man mountain, I call him K2. It's Kenny Ken. Good afternoon to you, and how are you, sir? Long time.
Good afternoon, Manny. It's good to talk about the great game of cricket. But obviously, it's very, very sad what's happened to Graham Thorpe in terms of first and foremost, him taking his own life. There was a situation 2 years ago where he was offered the Afghanistan job, and they said, he didn't take it because I thought he had a specific illness. I had no idea that it was. We now know it's because he tried to make attempts on his life. I know there was a situation where he was removed from his job at England because of the fact that England did poorly in the Ashes, in 2021, 2022, and Silverwood lost his job as well. But there was a bit of an incident with the Tasmanian police. I didn't know that kind of triggered it. But in terms of him taking his life, if you look at if you take away from the cricket, Thorpe has had a challenging life off the field, as we know. First and foremost, there was sadly, there was infidelities in his first marriage, and then his wife. He had to leave the tour of India in 2001 to try and repair his marriage. At the time when we were watching, the coverage on Sky. big announcement. Graham Thorpe left the tour of India to sort out personal problems. We now know he was trying to save his marriage, but I know if you read Thorpe's biography um, after 2005, it talks about that these troubled times and how he not only did he lose his marriage, but he lost his relationship with his kids as well.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and so when you think about it, you understand troubled mind, and then he found happiness. He with his now wife Amanda, who's now his widow, sadly. And you thought Thorpe got his career back on track because not only did we talk about Graham Thorpe, the cricketer, but he was very much a batting coach for England cricket team,
Yes,
and he brought on a lot of the young players.
exactly. Exactly, and we're going to discuss everything actually, because everything that you've mentioned, obviously, I've done some research on that. I did actually read Thorpe's autobiography in parts as well, and obviously, the stuff about his marriage breakdown and how he never really was able to mend fences with Nicola, who had since, of course, ended up going with Kieran Vorster, who was Tim Henman's fitness coach, and he did lose his relationship with his kids. Although I think there was some signs that he was trying to rebuild it. But we have to start, of course, with a sort of a happier sort of on a happier sort of note, and take a look back on his career. And of course, I will in fact share his Cricinfo profile right now, which has a lot of the details of his career. Obviously, as you and I both know, he made his debut in that Ashes series, that home series in 1993. And of course, his great mate from Surrey, Martin Bicknell, would make his debut in the following test. But when Thorpe made his debut, he had the likes of Martin McCaig, Mark Illett, and a chap named Lathwell, I think,
That's right.
with him. So the profile says it all. The most complete England batsman since the Gooch Gower era. He ended up with an average even higher than that of the beautifully fluid Gower, I believe. So obviously, beginning his Test career with an Ashes century, the first player in 20 years to score 100 on debut, and repeated the feat on the return tour at the WACA in February of 1995. He was able to attack against pace or spin and defend, but in equal measure, and was easily the best all-round fielder in the team. And I
Yes.
think you and I can both agree that when we first saw him play, obviously, I personally was fascinated by the side of a bloke who was left-handed playing in the team, and I thought he was a fine player as well. And he just had so many of those qualities, really, that singled him out as someone who would be one of the rocks of the team, apart from the likes of Stewie and Athers, and especially after we lost the likes of Gucci and Gatting in the early 90s. He also was very much ended up becoming very much a part of that team. And of course, his 200 not out in that Christchurch test, in which Nathan Astle also scored a century. And that was one of his best tours, averaging over 65 in that tour. And he had scored back-to-back hundreds on the previous tour there. Maybe if he had moved to New Zealand to settle down instead of staying in England, he would have had a happier life, I suppose. And you'll know that Jez Collins' son is also living in New Zealand.
That's right.
And Thorpe's first trip to the subcontinent came 7 years into his career. Of course, for several reasons. I don't know why he wasn't able to tour that often, but he made 100 in Lahore, memorably scored the winning runs in Fading Light and Karachi to clinch the series win in Pakistan, the first in 39 years. And then a few months later, he scored crucial runs to win in Sri Lanka. And we're going to talk about them specifically later on in a minute. But then, as you've mentioned, Kenny, his marriage crumbled in full view of the tabloids. He retired from ODIs after playing 82 games in the shorter format. And as you mentioned, that break from the game was an attempt to try and save his marriage. And we've also been hearing from the likes of Phil Tufnell and others about how much of a toll it takes on you touring. And Thorpe actually toured for England for 10 consecutive winters. But then, you mentioned, of course, that test against South Africa at the Oval. You saw Martin Bicknell bowl England to victory with that 4-wicket haul, including 2 wickets and 2 balls. Very nearly had a hat trick. I don't know if you got to see Graham Thorpe score that brilliant century, though, did you?
Well, the thing is, it's funny you talk about a game. I believe it's 2003.
Yeah.
it's funny that it
Okay.
was actually the last day and of the game.
Ah, yeah.
The reason why I know
Yes.
it's the last day of the game is because my wife, my she wasn't my wife at the time, but she was my girlfriend. So we had a choice of either going to watch Dave. Remember David Blaine? He was at the London Eye.
Yes.
Just
You mentioned that to me. I remember you had a
yeah,
choice between going to
yeah,
David Blaine and then taking
So
and then
David
going to
Blaine in the
or
young
yeah.
night, or go to watch the last day's play at the Oval, because we basically you paid on the gate to get in. So me
Yeah.
and wife decided we're going to pay the gate to get in, because the day before that, Flintoff was smacking the South Africans all over
Oh
South
yeah.
London. So we decided, right, why not? Let's go and watch the cricket, which we did. And as you say, Bicknell bowling the victory. It was Alex Stewart's last international
Yes.
game for England. Jimmy Anderson was in the squad, but a very young Jimmy Anderson, but he was 12th man. Nasser Hussain as well. He got presented to the crowd because Nasser Hussain that season quit the captaincy. So it's funny you should mention that. When you talk about Thorpe, you think about, you look at the actual start of his career especially for England. He was there when England were getting absolutely smashed to pieces by the Aussies. That was kind of
Yes.
we're in the infancy of England's Australia's domination of England from 1989. But remember, England lost the tour in '91, 3-0, and then Australians were just won the first two tests, and then we get to the third test, where Thorpe gets 100, and actually the Australians were set over nearly 400 to win, 378 to win. So
Yeah.
Thorpe was very much part of that, especially in the second innings. Obviously, in the first innings, he did okay, but it's the second innings where he actually kind of set England up for victory. But obviously, rain, played a part in that. But one of the things we liked about Thorpe is when he used to hit, when he's pulling, he used to pull, the short ball on one leg sometimes. And then
Yes.
also we liked his cover. We liked his cover drives. He's very good on the side, offside as well. But it was the fact that you think about it. Um, One of the reasons why I've got a massive, massive time for Graham Thorpe, obviously, is his record against Australia. He was one of the very few bowlers to cope with Walsh and Ambrose when they'll come to the end of their careers. But you think about Graham Thorpe, is that you think about when he started, England were in the doldrums. There wasn't much improvement when the Aussies came in '97. Remember, him and Hussain shared that
Yep.
beautiful partnership in the first test. When the Aussies were undercooked, there's no doubt the Aussies were undercooked, but England won that first test. Thorpe got 138. Hussain got 207 in that first test, and
Yes.
that set up England for the victory. But you think about it, at that time, you had David Lloyd as England coach. It was kind of pre-sexual contracts. England were average under Mark Waverton's captaincy, but when Alex Stewart took over, Thorpe still was a mainstay of the team. But when I think about the actual improvement in cricket, everyone talks about Michael Vaughan's great side, excellent team that won the Ashes in 2005, but it was actually Duncan Fletcher and Hussain
Absolutely.
who actually set up those foundations. And if you look at Hussain, where he put the fire back in English cricket, he made England competitive. They won series in obviously Sri Lanka. They won in Pakistan for the
Exactly.
first time in years. They won in Pakistan. They won the home series against West Indies, where they hadn't beaten the West Indies since 1969 in 2000,
Yes.
all under Hussain. When Hussain took over, England were bottom of the pile when it came to Test cricket. They had lost a series in Hussein's actually first series. They lost to New Zealand, remember, just after a
Yes.
shambolic World Cup home in '99. So when you talk about the renaissance of English cricket under Hussain, Graham Thorpe was very much part of that. Graham Thorpe attitude was over my dead body. You're tagging on,
Absolutely.
and that's why.
Absolutely.
And everyone talks about Thorpe's. He had a bit of flair. He was very good with that one leg pull shot, but also unlike like Gower, he put a price in his Ricket, whilst Gal was just a bit like Mark Waugh, beautiful to watch, but probably got a bit bored. There was a bit. So I look at Thorpe, there was a bit of a Gal in him, but there was a bit of the Gucci and boycott in him as well.
Oh
But one
yeah,
thing, he was a solid and player, and that's why, you know, you every time I look at the Hussein Renaissance cricket, I look at him fondly, but I always think about his mate Graham Thorpe. One thing about Graham Thorpe was he wasn't a team. He didn't believe in conform. You know, there were. He wasn't popular with Mark Gatting when Mark Gatting was selector. He didn't think Graham Thorpe was a team man in terms of, everyone singing from the same hymn sheet. I remember Gatting going up to Hussein says, apart from runs, what does Graham Thorpe bring? And what he meant was he wanted Graham Thorpe to be more of a leader and follow the established line. I mean, Bumble tells a very good story where they're in the West Indies and Thorpe, they're all wearing like blazers and England memorabilia, and Thorpe came in jeans, and I think it was Getty, American guy, loved cricket, Sir John Getty. Well, he went up to Bumble and said, "Is he part of your team?" And that's the thing, because he was always on tour. Bumble, it was basically Ronnie Irani, Graham Thorpe, and Tuffers who were just think never conformed. And Bumble always said that Hussein, Irani, and Tuffers were his acolytes. But that was the thing about Graham Thorpe. When you speak to people now, everyone said that Graham Thorpe was a person who made you feel welcome, and that she was there for you. You need any sort of advice or compromise. And I think that's where Gatting got it wrong. But you think of Graham Thorpe and you think about his record as well. It didn't really happen for him against India, but anywhere else, he was absolutely brilliant. And that was the sad thing about it. I think the sad thing about it is that you think about Graham Thorpe, his last game for England was against Bangladesh in 2005, but you had a situation where Duncan Fletcher and Michael Vaughan had to make a decision.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that. I will get to that, obviously. And there is also one more memory which Adam Hollyoake shared, because if you remember well, one day cricket was seldom England's, cup of tea during those times. And obviously in 1996, we had the World Cup in India and Pakistan, and we absolutely flopped there under Athas's captaincy. You remember that tour. Craig White obviously going home sick, not feeling well. Yeah. And the only games we won, of course, were against the associate nations, the UAE and Holland. But against the other teams, against New Zealand, we came a cropper. Against South Africa, we came a cropper. And Pakistan as well, they were in our group. And we got absolutely ripped to shreds by the eventual champions. But Adam Hollyoake in '97 actually took a team to Sharjah in the UAE to compete in the four-nation tournament, which involved India, Pakistan, and I think I don't quite remember it was the West Indies. We faced the West Indies in the final, and against all odds, that team actually went on to win. It was Hollyoake who was captaining. His Surrey mates, Stewie and Thorpe, were in the team as important players. Graham Hick was also playing well. The likes of Darren Gough and Mark Elam were also there. And Hollyoake tells a story about how, Thorpe was actually a really good mimic. He did a fine Jeffrey Boycott impersonation, and also said that, he also was a really good impersonator of Ray Illingworth. And he often said that Thorpe was a bit of a misunderstood bloke. People often think of him as a bit of a rather serious chap, but when you get to know him, he's absolutely, as you say, a nonconformist and very, lively, and can be a whole load of fun. And Hollyoake also told the story about when Surrey won the '99 county championship. They were celebrating like crazy in the dressing room, and Stewie and Thorpe were letting loose in the oval changing room.
That's horrible to hear. It's horrible to hear Surrey doing well in anything, because as you can imagine, I'm a Middlesex fan.
Just like Stevie.
And one of the things I despised, especially during the 90s, because I was actually brought up on Middlesex success. We had players like Mike Gatting, Embury, Edmonds, Roland Butcher, Norman Cowens, Radley. We had Downton as a wicketkeeper. So we had a very good team. And when we talk about the Thorpe era, It was. We're talking about before central contracts. I'm
Yes,
talking about my
exactly.
Middlesex era before central contracts. So when you talk about Surrey, Sunderland, and championships, that was an era where play. You even up until like the early 2000, the late 90s, where you play your test match, and then after your test match, you go and play for your county, or you'll come from your county
Oh
and
yeah,
play your county. Now, if you're a centrally contracted player, you hardly ever feature your county. The only time you feature your county is if you're not involved in white ball cricket. So that's an era where Graham Thorpe achieved all of that in terms of the amount of runs. He was actually pre and I say pre central contracts. Can you imagine what Thorpe would have done for England if he had one of those central contracts? If he had the kind of job security and kind of the
absolutely.
sole focus that Broad had, Anderson had, Varney had towards the end of his career, and all those kind of. Although Varney was part of the old era where he was cut, but although at the early part of it, you just never know what Thorpe had done, and that's why it's so remarkable. What Thorpe achieved, but it was down to a bit of talent, but also it was nuggety. I mean, Thorpe was playing with. He was about 10. He was playing with 18-year-olds. That's how much he loved cricket. He was a very good footballer as well, Thorpe.
Yeah.
Good for the room for him. Again, I've got issues with Thorpe because he's a Chelsea fan. We're Arsenal as well, but we'll let that go. But
We've got to let that go because look, Stewie was a Chelsea fan too, and I always say that
Stewie,
when it comes to
they're also you've
yeah,
got, Mike Gaines Tottenham is a Spurs fan, Rat Cash is Arsenal, Butcher's Crystal Palace, and then you had a raft of Chelsea fans. Whilst now you've got Atkinson, who lives in who's from Surrey, and Ollie Pope, who associated Surrey, are both Arsenal fans, which I assume they'll be Chelsea fans. So bringing a bit of football into it, but when you talk
yeah,
about Graham Thorpe and the era that he was in, it was sadly an era where England weren't dominant. You think about
exactly,
it,
exactly.
it was England struggled when Thorpe first came to side to beat a top nation. I mean, '98 when they beat South Africa, that's the first time in about 12 years when they beat a top nation. Before that was Australia in '86. So that's where you look at Thorpe's career and you think, for the first 5 years of his career, he was playing in relatively struggling England teams, but he still performed. He still managed to have an average of over 40 against the Aussies
Yes,
with McGrath and Warne, and also against the how do I say it, a fading West Indian side. But let's not forget South Africa as well. And that's another thing we don't really touch on. When you talk about people like Hussein, Atherton, and Thorpe, as they were playing against some of the greatest bowlers we've ever seen in an era where they were all in the same era, where the ball was moving, the bats weren't massive, the pitches had something in for a bowler. They weren't all flat tracks, and then yet he still excelled. I
he did.
repeat: Warne, McGrath, Gillespie, Walsh, Ambrose, Donald, Intini, Pollock, those kind of bowlers. And obviously you've got Wacker and Wazim, although Wazim has come to career. This guy scored runs in this era. Now you look at the great the batsmen like Joe Root. I'm not taking anything away from Joe Root or Alistair Cook, but they didn't have those bowlers of
They
that
didn't.
quality coming at them. We're
No.
talking, and then I didn't even mention Muralitharan. Didn't mention Muralitharan. But that is the caliber of bowler that Thorpe faced international level.
Exactly, exactly.
When people look at his average, you go, "Oh, he ain't got 50." Well, I ain't got here. So people actually had to go about Michael Atherton's average. I think it's under 40, isn't it? Or just about 40.
Exactly.
But look at the era of bowlers they played against.
Exactly. Alan Lamb was the same thing. I mean, his average never adjusted to his talent, but you said it. He was a great player, short pitch bowling.
And that's the thing. People do not take that in consideration. Not only did he have to contend with no central contracts, he had to face the best of the best. The late 80s, 90s, up until 2000 was a great era for bowlers. Now, I'm not saying they're any, but right now, you look at the bowlers now. Now, I fear for fast bowling now Anderson's retired. You think about Rabada was meant to be the next cabinet rank, but South Africa don't make any money from Test cricket. So Rabada isn't going to play that much Test cricket. Yet he averages 22 per wicket, and he's got 295 wickets. He'd be struggling to get 400 wickets because the fact that the only countries that play Test cricket, the fill-out grounds, is the big three who keep the money for themselves: India, Australia, and England. So that's why you look at Graham Thorpe's career and you have to put it in context. Obviously, all eras are different, but come on. In an era where it's all white ball cricket, where the bats are bigger, where people don't even bat properly, they're just slog. And bowlers are just basically, how do I say it, like the equivalent of Derek Chisora, punch bags. They're punch bags.
I love that comparison. You and I both share a contempt for the man they call Del Boy. No, not that Del Boy, this Del Boy. And I tell you what, that bloke, next year he will never be a champion. He will never be a millionaire. And the profile says it all. Obviously, from that game in 2003 till the end of his Test career, he scored 1,511 runs at an average of 54. An amazing run for England, finishing on 100 tests against Bangladesh. But sadly, as we all know, and we're going to discuss that, of course, he was omitted from the Ashes squad. But before we come to the Ashes thing, there's a question I sort of want to ask you. All that work and still not enough recognition. Now, we spent the best part of about 5 or 10 minutes talking about how, magnificent a player he was and how he had to contend with so many, fine bowlers. This is a guy who, of course, began his career, as you said, at a time when England weren't doing well, but the other teams were just so dominant. And eventually, under Nasser Hussain, we started to improve a little bit. We got a little bit better. And, of course, under Varney, we continued. And it reached a sort of a zenith, as it were, when we won the Ashes. And we'll come to that in a minute. The sad part is, though, I love how you mentioned that the work started under Hussain and Fletcher. And Hussain, of course, is regarded as, in many ways, the architect of our revival. And, of course,
100%.
when the Zimbabwean Fletcher came in, obviously he was an antithesis to Bumble, but very much an effective coach. And, they set about working perfectly together. And under Hussain, the likes of Stewart and Thorpe and later on Atherton and a few others really started to play their roles really well. But the sad part is, when people talk about that era, they talk about how Nasser Hussain was the firebrand turned leader who basically was the leader that we needed, someone who could, take the team by the scruff of their neck and bring them up, as they needed to. I just don't know if Thorpe was really given that recognition that he really deserved. And then, of course, you had that beautiful...
I don't think it was, but, the fact is that I think within the squad, I think Fletcher recognised Thorpe's attributes. He probably would have heard stories about Thorpe from Bumble. As much as you look at Bumble being a very jolly man that you see on the radio, and you see him in cricket, he's extremely funny, he's extremely personable. Bumble wasn't all Bumble behind the scenes wasn't all right sunshine and flowers. He wasn't. He was a hard taskmaster. He was very much do it my way. Let's not forget when England played Zimbabwe and it was a tie, and Bumble's words were so embarrassing.
Oh yes,
we actually battered them. What, you tied the game, Bumble? But that was the situation, and you would have thought that I don't think. And Gatton is another one. It wasn't a massive form of Graham Thorpe. Sometimes I thought Beefy was on and off about Thorpe as well. But the situation is Thorpe deserves all kinds of recognition. Without Graham Thorpe,
Exactly.
without Graham Thorpe, that renaissance of English cricket under Hussein wouldn't have happened. He was the
Absolutely.
exactly what he needed. Someone he could trust, but someone he knew had fire in his belly to get the best out of the players. You look at Michael Vaughan. Michael Vaughan would have looked up more to Graham Thorpe than he probably would have looked up to Hussein, because he would have taken Hussein's fire in his belly, but he would have definitely looked up Graham Thorpe. Let's not forget, you look at the leadership group under Hussein, it involved Thorpe, Goffey, another good friend of Graham Thorpe's. Again, that would have happened under Goff was there. And also, Michael Vaughan was seen as a future leader. So he was on that committee, that leadership group. So, leadership groups in cricket, in all kinds of sports, you'll have, obviously, you'll have the captain, the vice captain, then a couple of senior players. But you'll have a young player who's been earmarked for future leadership. So so you look at the England team, the football team just now. Jude Bellingham is on the leadership group. He's only 20, but he's on leadership group. But Jude Bellingham is being groomed to be the next England captain, the next leader. Your Brian Robson, whatever you want to call him. So that's what was happened. So someone like Varney would have looked up at Graham Thorpe. Let's not forget, in Varney's first 2 years, when England, Hussein set the foundations. But let's not forget, in Varney's first 2 years, before the Ashes, they won in Sri Lanka. Mm-hmm. They beat the West Indies home and away.
Yep.
And in between that, they beat New Zealand at home. Then they went to South Africa, a very difficult
beautiful series that was.
Callis was still at his best. He's 30 years old. And Tini was still at his best. You still had Pollock, and you had a young Dale Steyn coming into that series. England won that series 2-1.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
England won that series 2-1. Graham Thorpe was very much part of that, where the foundations, Vaughan's foundations were set for 2005. So, Pete, it's only when you look back at the common denominator, when you look at the improvements under Hussein, the foundations that Vaughan set for the Ashes win in 2005. Graham Thorpe was in those teams.
He was, absolutely.
After he sorted out his personal problems, he played uninterrupted for England.
Absolutely.
That coincided with him towards the end of beginning of Vaughan's captaincy. He met his second wife.
Yeah, Amanda, who made him very happy again. And we're going to talk about his personal problems. But the reason why I asked this question, obviously, is because, it came to a head, really. Obviously, his back was giving him all sorts of problems. I still remember only too well the exchanges that Thorpe had with both Fletch and Vaughan, where, it was sometime around about the Bangladesh and the two-test Bangladesh series where Thorpe was scheduled to play his 99th and 100 tests. And I think, Fletch was pretty much, up front saying, Thorpe, mate, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can see you playing against Australia the way things are going. I know you've been playing wonderfully well, but if your back's giving you problems, I don't know if I can do that. And we've got a young, firebrand and Kevin Peterson coming up. Ian Bell's also showing a great deal of promise. I don't know if I can see you there. And Varney also, I know that Varney was really, lavish in his praise of Thorpe, saying he wanted Thorpe to be a part of the Ashes series, but he also memorably said, Thorpe, mate, if your back is giving you problems, do not hesitate to tell us. And these were his words. There is no difference between 99 and 100. I am more than willing to rest you for the test at Chester Street so that Kevin Peterson can have a debut. Eventually, as it turned out, the ECB decided that they didn't have the heart to deny a terrific servant his opportunity to play his 100th test, and he ended up playing it. But, obviously there were circumstances regarding
mm,
his possible availability for the Ashes series, given his injury, his fitness issues, his back, and
mm,
so forth. And maybe he decided at that moment that that would be his final season of cricket with England. And then,
mm,
he also received an offer from Dave Gilbert to go to coach over at New South Wales and play some club cricket with Balmain. And
mm.
that was where, of course, as you mentioned, he worked with Steve Smith and Dave Warner. And Fletch, in his own book, where he spoke about the his childhood and then obviously coaching England with the Ashes as well, he spoke about how he felt a little bit cheesed off a bit with Thorpe's decision to retire and then move to Australia. But Thorpe, in his mind, wanted to get what he called job security. But then
100%.
when you take a look at the fine margins, though, and especially when you consider in that series, if you remember, Ian Bell's form was absolutely patchy, while Peterson, in stark contrast, ended up,
Mm,
doing justice to his selection, and how at the Oval, which is of course ironically Thorpe's, manor, and which for which Peterson would later play in
mm.
his career, he ended up scoring that big century. But there's a part of me that feels that Thorpe might not have been completely okay. In subsequent
Well,
interviews, he said, in subsequent interviews, I'll come to you. In
mm,
subsequent interviews, he did say, that he would have loved to have been a part of an Ashes series win,
mm,
but he ultimately wasn't good enough. The team wasn't good enough that time. And this time around, he said, I'm fortunate to have played 100 tests. I've got an amazing wife. We're expecting a new baby. I've got another daughter from Amanda, who I really love. And I'm looking to concentrate on family life right now.
mm,
So I've got a lot for which to be grateful. But then, in addition to all of that, there's this idea, and Shane Warne, Lord rest his soul, also said in his autobiography that the ECB, the selectors, made the right decision because they thought that Thorpe's left-handedness would have been a bit of a weakness against Shane Warne bowling, especially if, since, as you recall, he was
mm,
able to get the ball to spin in quite sharply from the
mm,
rough and put the left-handers in trouble. Maybe they thought that Thorpe wouldn't be an option. And the overall idea was that maybe we just didn't need to have someone with the memories of,
mm,
Ashes series lost coming in. We want to have a new approach. And it's
mm,
effectively as if in people's minds, Thorpe was just, cut aside and forgotten. I know that there's talk of being ruthless, but
mm.
you can't be that heartless, in my opinion. And I don't think Thorpe was quite okay with that
Mm,
2005 Ashes
mm.
snub as he says he was. What's your take on that?
Well, first and foremost, if you don't mind me saying so, the explanations from Vaughan and like I said, Fletcher was just
Fletcher.
bullshit. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Michael Vaughan is a man of contradictions when it comes to this issue. Let's not forget that Michael Vaughan will tell anyone who'd listen he basically wanted when they played Australia to have players who had no scars or thrashings. Well, if you're talking about that kind of player, well, he played in 2003 and in
Yep.
parts of 2001 when they got Shalikins. But he's a young man. He was a captain. Ashley Giles another was part of Hussein the 2002 2003 shot. But I think what he's trying to say is that he was referring to Thorpe, and I think it was a good excuse to get Kevin Peterson's side, and that was the thing because believe it or not, Ian Bell was in the side before Kevin Peterson. It wasn't Ian
Yes,
Bell; it was
exactly.
actually Kevin Peterson. Ian Bell was meant to make his debut against West Indies a year before. He was earmarked to play, and then I don't know whether it was illness or they changed their mind of selection. Because I remember Ian Bell um, actually they were about to announce him into the West Indies series the year before. So Ian Bell was a mainstay, was part of that side. I believe Ian Bell went on tour to South Africa, even though he was feeling his way, he was being groomed. The issue wasn't Ian Bell. Ian Bell was already going to be in that Ashes series. It was either Thorpe or Kevin Peterson. So when they try to rewrite history and say it was something to do with Ian Bell, that's absolute rubbish. Ian Bell was already in the selectors' minds. Kevin Peterson was not in the selectors' minds to play Test cricket. They're talking absolute rubbish. How Kevin Peterson got into the side was because of the fact that England played 3 one-day internationals against South Africa in South Africa, and I believe Kevin Peterson got a couple of centuries or 3 centuries, even though South Africa won the series 3-0. But Kevin Peterson
4-1 actually, 4-1. I remember
4-1, yeah,
4-1.
actually 4. So he smashed them out of the park, and then there was the triangular series with Bangladesh. There's quite a few series with Australia. There was like a series with Australia and England, and then there was a triangular series where they actually got to final at Lords, where it's a tie. Kevin Peterson was smashing in one of the one days. He smashed Gillespie out of Test cricket, and then if you watch the Kevin Peterson, you watch the Kevin Peterson series when Hussein had a 3-part series of interviewing him in South Africa, where Michael Vaughan said that when Kevin Peterson was smashing Gillespie all over Bristol, who came up to him? It was Collingwood, Harmison, Flintoff, and Trez. No, sorry, Andrew Strauss, who says you've got to get this guy into the team. And Michael Vaughan said, I think that's what we're going to have to do. Because he wanted Peterson to actually go attack the Aussies by playing an attack to actually impose himself from McGrath, impose himself as Vaughan, like they saw him do to Gillespie. Now, Graham Thorpe is capable of doing that, but he's also a person with defending lives. England wanted to play a brand of cricket where they took the attack to the Australians. Just like Australia when they won 10 years before in the West Indies, where they played different brand cricket. They were very aggressive. They meant business. They wanted to go toe to the West Indies in terms of getting in their faces, just like England did 10 years ago, 19 years ago with the Ashes. The same sort of thing, and the same era. So, in Peterson, epitomised that. But let's not rewrite history and say that Ian Bell kept Thorpe out the side. That's not the case.
It wasn't Ian Bell. All I'm saying is that Vaughan said he wanted Thorpe in the team.
No, but that's the thing. Vaughan's rewriting history. Bell was already earmarked for that. Vaughan's just bullshitting. I'm sorry, it's bullshit.
Yeah,
it's absolute bullshit. It's 100% Graham Thorpe or thing. Because if Vaughan is going by that psyche that he wanted a new team, people who haven't been scarred about playing against Australia, he wanted to play a attacking round of cricket. Well, then the last spot on the side was for Kevin Peterson or Thorpe.
Absolutely.
In terms of Thorpe's form, there was no way that Thorpe, should be left out. However, obviously there was a back issue, but come on, you and I have lived life. We know that Fletcher and Vaughan were looking for an excuse to make that difficult decision. Him having back issues was basically like a gift from heaven in terms of what they want to do.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons why I always say.
Hello. Hold on. Yes.
Yeah, all right. Just take your time. Take your time. Take your time. Okay. Well, while Kenny takes his time, I've also been sent some, comments, of course, from our main host, Mr. Jenkins, that this is, of course, primarily a stream about men's mental health. So I'm going to share some links, obviously, and we will share these links again. Do please make sure you take a look at these links to understand more about men and mental health, especially given how, men also have problems about which they seldom speak at times. And another link over here from mind.org.uk. Get it off your chest, a report on men's mental health. A wonderful link over here from bacp.co.uk. Possible counselling for men, if as a man as well, or any gender, if you have issues and you would like to seek some counselling to talk through them. Suicide should never ever be an option. Do please not hesitate to make sure you get the counselling you need. And another link, of course, from Psychology Today. Yeah, talking about men's issues, and we're going to talk about this again, Kenny, obviously later on the stream. But I'm glad you agree with me now. And what really angered me about this was that obviously the series, reached its conclusion. Our boys won the Ashes. We had the open top bus parade, a visit to Tony Blair at Downing Street, and all Thorpe could do was play out the season at Surrey and then move to Australia in relative anonymity and have a good life there. It just angered me in many ways that people talk from both sides of their mouth, saying that given how we were, we'll be standing on your shoulders. But then when it comes to, the moment that you might have dreamt of, we're going to sort of, cut you loose. And with a footballing connection, you might know this. There are several England women's footballers who have met the same fate. You think of someone like Rachel Yankee, Farrah Williams, both of them played for Arsenal. Yeah, Steph Houghton, absolutely.
As well. She was, you think about it, again, Steph Houghton, you think of women's football, all those players were pre the money that was thrown into the BBC, ITV, Sky as well, and advertisers as well. They weren't throwing money into English football. Don't get me wrong. When Steph Hampton was captain of England in the women's, the BBC were the only channel that were actually televising the European Championships and the World Cups. England were a semi-final team under before Wiegman came along, and that's when all the money's piled in. Before, and I say it respectfully, there wasn't any women pundits on our mainstreams. Then obviously, after obviously pre the European Championships 2022, it was beginning to happen, and then they won the Euros again. That's when it became higher profile. But that's what happens in sport. It's Wiegman, as far as I'm concerned, life for her teeth, didn't have the balls to tell Steph Houghton, who was England captain before she got injured, that she was no longer needed or wanted. And the same thing will happen to Williamson as well. I'm sure it will happen to her, where the team will move away from them, and then she's got to make that decision. She's probably going to waffle that over.
It was Phil Neville who dropped Williams from that squad, and of course, when Mark Sampson came in, he literally, kicked Rachel Yankee to the curb, and I could never ever forgive him for that because I know how good she was.
But that's the thing. It happened to Thorpe, and it'll happen to other players. Look what's happened to Jimmy. Look what's happened with Jimmy. I say it respectfully. I think they were trying to get rid of Broad Anderson for years. They were. If you look at there was a tour of the West Indies when Root was captain in 2 years ago, where West Indies won 1-0, and it wasn't a close game, although England were on top of a couple of games. West Indies won. They didn't take Thorpe and Anderson. So that tells me that they were trying to move away from Thorpe and Anderson. If you look at certain tours, there's been times where Stuart Broad has been dropped from matches, even at home, where they're trying to move away from them. And the same with Jimmy. So as good as great servants that these two are, that's how sport is. Especially when you come to the end, allegedly comes to the end of your career, the fall is not only is it spectacular, it's ruthless, it's brutal.
Brutal is an understatement, and for a time, Australia also, after cutting loose Ian Healy and Mark Waugh in a very ruthless manner, they actually seem to have gotten things right by handing Justin Langer, Matthew Hayden, and Shane Warne. Yeah,
Healy's one was awful.
Absolutely.
It was wicked, awful what they did to Healy. People like
it was Trevor Holmes who was one of the selectors, I think. Trevor Holmes.
But it was Trevor Holmes. It was Steve Waugh as well. But who was the coach, the first coach who was a Queenslander? I'll get his name anyway. But he's credited he was coach from 1999 to 2007. He was part of that as well, where they're trying to get Gilchrist in the team. Happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Even in West Indies cricket, where how Richie Richardson got treated because Brian Lara wanted the captaincy.
Yep, and that's how you deal with it. But if that treatment as a player isn't bad enough, you know, you have a situation as well where, you know, when many of our England stars end their careers, they end up finding, you know, lucrative post-playing careers in the media, or else being able to do something really useful. And also, when we talk about mental health, we know about the struggles of Marcus Trescothick, obviously, and how he was given a great deal of, you know, support and sympathy. Sort of with the advent of social media, you know, people got a lot more aware, and maybe, you know, he was given a lot of support. And his book, Coming Back to Me, which I've read, of course, a William Hill Book of the Year. That was a fine book. I just don't know if Thorpe was ever given that luxury. And now there's this question over here. You mentioned it also at the top of the show. He was able to sort of, you know, rebuild those bridges with the ECB in terms of becoming a coach. And although it reached a bit of a sad conclusion with that Ashes series, he also has to be credited in many ways for our maiden ODI World Cup win. And so that's also another example of how sometimes, you know, you miss out on something as a player, but you can get some satisfaction as a coach, and he had that. But then after that, you know, Ashes defeat, he was cut loose. And the sad part is that for his personality, you know, you think of you can almost compare him in a way with an Arsenal connection to someone like a Paul Merson, who was a very cheeky chappy who told so many stories about how strict Georgie Graham was. And I think there was a tale that you might remember. I think Georgie saw Merson and a couple of others, you know, having a few too many pints before they were supposed to take a tour to the Far East, I think. And then when those poor souls ended up going to the airport, Graham pretty much stopped them and said, "You boys aren't coming with us because we saw you drinking when you were not supposed to be drinking." But Thorpe and Merce had similar personalities, and you know, you think of how Thorpe was, how Merce was able to get some kind of you know, recovery with the media. Thorpe never really ended up being, you know, courted as a media person in many ways, and I just wonder, you know,
he did some work with 5 He did the odd bit here and there, but you know, as Thorpe says, you know, they're hiring a middle-aged bloke with a lisp. You know what I mean? And I think that's the situation with we have with Thorpe is I think Thorpe's a very shy man. I think he could have done a lot more, but again, the fact is that what Thorpe really, really appreciated was that he was a batting coach, and he was able to, and I think he got more pleasure from that before. You look at now, I compare it to Andrew Flintoff. Andrew Flintoff, I believe that after Andrew Flintoff retired from cricket, he, I don't know what he was doing, but I say it with respect. There were times when he actually made a prat of himself.
Oh yeah,
he was
the Pratt of the Caribbean, if you recall.
He was actually, but I meant, you know, like he was on certain TV shows where I thought, come on, this ain't what you doing. He was basically on every advert going. He was doing all sorts of shows with his new friends, you know, James Corden, Jamie Redknapp, you know, all those shows on Sky, and then something that he's really good at, you know, the like I said, you know, like Top Gear. Unfortunately, you know, he had that awful accent. He's lucky to be alive, but now he's now gone back into cricket, where the cricket thing, right, come back, and that was down to Rob Key bringing him back in the fold, and he's now coached the Superchargers, Northern Superchargers, and you know, there's talk of him being the white ball coach for England. And that's what what they were doing for Thorpe as well. But unfortunately, as we'll discuss later, you know, as other issues we discuss, you know, Thorpe had you know, like I said, he had an illness which a lot of men don't talk about. But we're going to go into it later.
We will. And
we'll go into it later, because I think there's an important point you've got to make, not just about Thorpe, but the game itself, and that this isn't the first time this has happened. This isn't the first time, but we're going to get into it anyway. But I think the ESVP, I think they're a lot better than they were before. They're a lot. Let's not forget, both when a lot of ex-players do get involved in the game. Graham Gooch was very much England's batting coach, you know, especially under Alistair Cook's captaincy. He worked with the, you know, overseas tours. Ian Botham was the selector. Ashley Charles, he's got a massive job with the, you know, ECB previously. Now he works with Warwickshire. Keys does a lot of work. So you do. There are ex-internationals who have been involved in the fold. You know, you know, this summer, Jimmy Anderson, he's being kept as a bowling consultant. You know, during this summer, obviously he's not going to go on any overseas tours because he's got a family, but they're very much trying to keep him in the fold. So,
and of course, Marcus Trescothick is also now involved
again,
with England as well.
And Marcus Trescothick has come a long way. You know, there were times when Marcus Trescothick couldn't even go abroad without his family, where it set him off. And I'm not just talking about England. I think there was a Champions Trophy in India where Somerset were.
Yes, I remember.
White ball champion tour in India where the best teams and white ball teams were having a sort of Champions League trophy in India. He couldn't go. He basically couldn't even get out the departure lounge. He went in the palace.
Yeah. Actually, he did. That was in 2010 or something in that decade, and he did actually play a game or two in India, but then he had to go home. In 2008 was when Somerset were making a tour to Dubai. That was when he couldn't even get past the departure lounge, and he was sort of seen, you know, crying his eyes out at the Dixons over there at the airport. But now, the reason why I asked this question, of course, is that obviously, you know, losing his job with England would have hurt him. He was supposed to take up the job in Afghanistan, but obviously, given Afghanistan's troubles, it's also a surprise that, you know, Johnny Trott would go over there and coach them. But obviously, you know, he's worked wonders with them. But the thought of him having to potentially move his family all the way over there and then, you know, try to have a life over there, I think you and I can both agree that Afghanistan would not be a place for, you know, a family to live, especially a family of all girls.
But nowadays it doesn't actually happen. You know, even in football, you know, the families do stay at home, especially if the kids are at school. The family will stay at home, and that's that he wouldn't necessarily have taken his family. I know, for we know, Trott doesn't take his family to Afghanistan. He will stay in England. You know, let's not forget that when Duncan Fletcher was England coach, he still had his main home in South Africa. The same with you know Bob Woolmer, the late Bob Woolmer. Not a massive fan of him as a main because of for other issues, but his family still stayed in South Africa. So I think with the money that these guys were earned for, you know, coaching of others, they don't uproot their families anymore. And the reason why they don't uproot their families is because of if you are going to do a job, you know, you bring your families over. Again, it's a mental health issue for them if they can't settle.
Exactly. And Afghanistan wouldn't have been a place for them to settle. But even if, as you say, he couldn't have taken the family, the sheer distance between them would have been, you know, even torture. Which is why, you know, I really do think that if the ECB had helped him find another job within, you know, back in England, if you remember when Andy Flower was replaced as England coach, he ended up becoming, you know, more involved with the youth/Lions setup. So why something similar couldn't have been done for Thorpe, I don't know. And there's always going to be this nagging question at the back of my mind that once again the ECB have seen it fit to, you know, eat up one of their own. Matthew Hoggard in his autobiography said these words: when you are involved with England, you go from being in this bubble where you can't so much as break wind without people knowing about it, to people sort of leaving you on your own when you get dropped. And he spoke about his problems with England with David Graveney and had these final words: the ECB had to improve their man management and start to treat players, especially long-standing servants, more like human beings. Otherwise, the edge could very easily be taken off the thrill of playing for England. So
he's right.
Yeah,
he's right.
Exactly. And of course, now, of course, this will sort of segue into this particular question, of course, where we talk about his personal life and then talk about mental health issues. You mentioned, of course, his first marriage to Nicola, which, you know, was happy at first, but then which ended up, you know, turning sour completely. I think, you know, in his autobiography, Thorpe did talk about how he was framed for an act of infidelity he didn't commit. That was in New Zealand at the time, but then confessed to Nicola later that he was unfaithful. And then round about the time he was, making his triumphant comeback, Nicola saw it fit to go to the papers and pretty much call him a serial cheat and no hero. And that all the fallout from that, her decision to move in with Kieran Vorster and her taking close to full custody of Henry and Amelia, his two children, that would have affected him. And he was also a very big part of a campaign which wanted to see parents also to see fathers and specifically have visiting more than just visiting rights for their children, but also to be, equal parts of that particular marriage. But I think Nicola at the time wanted full custody, and Thorpe just wasn't getting any happiness until he met Amanda and his daughter Kitty, and then Emma was born circa the Ashes, so he found that happiness. But when you I don't know if you probably won't know this personally, but you might have know a lot of friends of yours who've had some marital issues with them, and I'm trying to be as respectful as possible. When you go through that kind of a messy divorce and children are involved, it can't not have an effect on you, right?
100%. I think you've got to look at the whole situation. Thorpe was no angel when it came to that sort of thing, but he's not the. But that will happen a lot of times on tour, where there has been issues with accusations of infidelity from cricketers when they go abroad. Both of them, 86, the biggest accusation.
Don't remind me of Beefy, please.
That David Gower talks about in his autobiography when he was engaged to his first fiancée, that how he succumbed to temptation as well, and it's documented. It's not me making up; it's documented, and I think
I believe you.
In terms of Thorpe as well, what happened with Thorpe was the situation is that his wife from her side of her side is that she couldn't cope with the fact that he was always away from tour, and when she had problems with an ectopic pregnancy, he wasn't around. He had to be told to go and be there, and then when the kids were born, she was virtually a single mother because he was on tour. And then when she was hearing stories of the infidelities, and he had the nickname he was called, they called him Shagger, and that was a situation where that would have sort of humiliated him, giving them a sort of nickname. But I think any man, one of the biggest blow for a man is when your wife does move on. And not only do they move on in spectacular fashion, she's not only she met someone else, she's moved the person into the house, and that person is now living with his kids 24/7. No matter how much reassurance the other man will give and say, "I'll never take your kids away from you," the fact is that that's a massive blow for a man. Graham Thorpe doesn't talk about his infidelities. He generally says that she's the one who had the affair because she's the one who got the kids and everything. So again, those are one of those things where it was a hard one. And Graham Thorpe openly talked about his autobiography. A sad one was the fact that he was on his own. He didn't know how to cope. He was asking his wife to help him find somewhere to live, and he woke up and the only thing in the fridge was a beer, and he succumbed to drink and drugs. Not so much, drink and depression, and not drugs, depression, and that's the situation. Thorpe also talks about a difficult relationship he had with his kids as well, especially his son Henry, where he said that his son was shouting at him and to leave him alone and sort of blah blah. And now his son, when England played South Africa in 2004, I don't know if it was 2002, it was one of those times anyway, 2003, where his son said he wants South Africa to beat England, but that's because Vorster's South African. So it was one of those sort of things. It was pretty sad. And then, you had the situation with England where, Peterson replaced him in the team, but he had this happy event where he met his missus, and he they had the baby. He inherited her daughter. I believe that she sees him as her dad now.
Absolutely.
You thought he'd be happy, but I think with the situation with Thorpe, if you're in a situation where you get divorced, you move on. If you don't have a relationship with your other kids, and you know there's a bit of resentment from your ex-wife and the kids towards you, that would have definitely had an impact on Thorpe's personal life. 100% it would have had an impact on him, because he's still their father. So it is a very, very sad situation. But the thing is that when you look at cricketers, there is a very high rate of depression and anxiety for cricket. Especially when the most successful cricketers go on tour. That's why you look at what they try and do now. Especially Australia, they try and get the families with them. They get the families with them and friends. You look at an Australian tour, especially when they come over here. Their families are always here, always
Exactly.
here. And I think in England they try to do that as well, replicate what they do in terms of Australia. But obviously Australia is the other side of the world. And when they do go to other countries, the exception New Zealand, they're going to the four corners where it's different time zones. So obviously, they are going to need their families with them to get some sort of normality. But one thing about cricket, and obviously we're going to talk about how Graham Thorpe's ended. Very high suicide rate. And people don't talk about the suicide rate with cricketers. Poor old Matthew Maynard, his son. He about how many years ago was it now? He's an example. Played for Surrey as well. Graham Thorpe, he took his life. Roebuck, obviously there was other issues. He took his life,
yeah.
But David Bairstow took his life. And these are high profile people who've played the game in this country, played the game. There is a situation where cricket does have a problem where I think a lot of it's to do with the fact that it's a very nomadic career, especially if you're successful, you've got to go abroad and you're away from families. How many marriages, cricketing marriages actually survive? How many? I can't think of. Bob Willis lost his first marriage. Botham's probably the only player that had a successful marriage, and Bumble, Hussein's got a successful marriage, but that's when the ECB have got better. But if you look at the divorce rate amongst cricketers, and the mental health, like I said, illnesses amongst cricket, and the suicide rate amongst cricket. Sadly, Graham Thorpe is just one of a line of people who suffered by all three. We're talking marriage breakdown, depression, mental health, and suicide. All three of them hit that poor man. Now, he probably wouldn't want to do that. He would have known it was wrong to do that. He would have known it was wrong to put his family, especially his mum and dad, who are still living, his brothers, through that. He would have known, not to do that to his wife and his two kids. And, if his other kids, I understand that his son has got coaches in cricket. He's a cricket coach who runs the Surrey. So he would have been within the fraternity. The oldest daughter's a singer. So it's one of those things where he wouldn't want to do that. He was know it's wrong. But something's happened to him in there. He, as much as counselling as he would have got, he still would have thought the world was better off without him. Remember, he took in the reason why he didn't take the Afghanistan's job was because he tried to take his life. We know that now, but we didn't then. We thought he had heart problems. So this isn't the first time that he did it. He was I believe he was in the ICU unit for quite a while. But that's the thing with these things. We don't know what goes on in people's mind. But I can tell you categorically, if you do think of doing that. You know it's wrong. You know you shouldn't do it. But no matter how much you have going for you, if you still think your life's worthless, and then there's nothing anyone could do for you. Doesn't matter how many kids you have, how much money you have, and how successful your life is. You have to have that self-worth. If you don't, then you're going to have situations like that. In cricket, has all three of those issues.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about self-love. I mean, there's a reason why Kevin Peterson called himself Fig Jam, but he also spoke a great deal about how his England career ending early when it did actually played a role in saving his marriage. Matthew Hoggard also spoke about how that tour of New Zealand was the one that ended his England career, but that was also, the tour where he was undergoing a few issues with his wife, Sarah, who had postnatal depression. It hit the poor lady like a double whammy. She wanted to go home to England, but Hoggy wanted to stay on. And in retrospect, he ends up writing in his autobiography that in retrospect, he should have told the management, I need to go home. My family is important. And of course, the fact that he ended up getting dropped after that first test, and I think it was Hamilton, where he bowled quite poorly, I believe. He was replaced by Jimmy Anderson for that test, among others. And he was never considered again. And even when, as you mentioned in another stream, Jimmy Pattinson's brother being picked ahead of him for that Headingley test against South Africa, I think Varney also again said the reason why Hoggy wasn't picked was because he had a benefit at Yorkshire and he was drunk as a skunk afterwards, so he couldn't be picked. But again, that's another example of Varney.
You know what's not too funny.
Right?
Sorry to cut you off, but another Varney bullshit. I think Michael Vaughan. I think he's a bit of a storyteller. He's trying to reinvent himself, and he's very good on TV. He's got a very good career in Australia, but his relationship with the truth does tend to differ from reality at times. I think there's a lot of bullshit in what he says.
Yeah,
let's just just be honest. You don't rate him, and you wanted to, give it up. Let's not. When you talk about Varney, it's very interesting what Jimmy Anderson had to say about his captaincy, and he wasn't very complimentary as well. He is actually more He was more complimentary to Strauss and Hussein. And despite all the people who slag with Hussein, like Flintoff, Steve Harmison's only got good things to say about Nasser Hussain. The same with Jones and all those other people. Michael Vaughan, don't get me wrong, Michael Vaughan, he had his favourites in terms of Flintoff and Ashley Giles is one of his best mates in the team. But for every players like that, there's always a Jimmy Anderson. Jimmy Anderson was pretty miffed that he wasn't part of the 2005 series. He was actually miffed when he was going through half time. He needed his captain to, put his arm around his shoulder and give him a G up. All he got was a sarcastic comment. So that when I look at Michael Vaughan, I just think, and let's not forget, after 2005, England went back to being a shambles. After that,
absolutely. I remember that. And it just goes to show that once you reach that zenith, sometimes the fall back down can be quite hard. Staying at the top is always going to be quite hard, and maybe there's an idea that people are starting to see through Michael Vaughan in a way, but that's also another issue in that Hoggard was also in some.
Hello, guys. Just going to carry on the show. Yeah. It's one of the things that, with the situation with cricket in general, we have to. I think what cricket's doing really well is that it's about the workload. I mean, one of the things that Kevin Peterson said, although Kevin Peterson is not wholly thought of by a lot of people in cricket still, especially within the ECB, one of the things that Kevin Peterson did mention was his workload. He cites the fact that when he was playing for England, he was playing he was doing IPL, he was in a T20 team, he was in the one-day team and a test team, and all he said is that he wanted them to manage his workload. We're now seeing a situation where how cricket's dealing with the the situation is that you are seeing a lot of cricketers take time off because of mental health. People saying, "Look, I need to take time away from the game because I can't carry on." Meg Lanning, typical example, Australian captain. She had to take time off for her mental health issues, but because of workload. We even go far back as Richie Richardson in 2005. He had it was a case of exhaustion, and I think that's what cricket's what's happening with cricket now is that we're having a situation where cricketers now are basically like choosing what format they're going to play in, and they stick to it. You know, West Indian cricketers now will only play white ball cricket because they don't really want to play red ball cricket. We even got a situation in England where I'll get his name anyway. He only English player who was primed to play all formats only plays white ball cricket. You know what I mean? Rashid only plays white ball cricket. That's the situation now with cricket. Is that it's all about workload.
Absolutely. And I was actually saying before I got cut off that, people are starting to see through Michael Vaughan in a way. But, while the likes of Hoggard and Trescothick were able to find some solace later on, Thorpe just wasn't able to. And, we are, of course, I'm going to sort of wrap this stream up in the next 5 or 10 minutes talking about the issue of mental health. And I was going to wonder if more could have been done for Thorpe in a way, because, you have someone like him who played 100 tests. And as we agree, he was a big part of the team when it was poor at one stage. He helped, rebuild the team. And he ended up being stuck with a crummy MBE while most of his contemporaries ended up getting bigger honours. You can't just have a situation where some people like him end up being forgotten. And we see so much of cricketers like, Beefy and David Gower and even Bob Willis, Lord rest his soul, in the media doing a lot more things. I know you said that Thorpe was a lot more comfortable coaching, but surely the ECB should have, in fact, done more for him. And that is why, I just tend to think that if he was, of course, playing in an era where we weren't talking about mental health that much. And now, of course, you could say in some ways that after Thorpe retired, people have started to become a little bit more cognizant of those issues. I just wonder, in many ways, of all of those deep-seated hurt, insecurities, all those anxieties from years gone by, how he was never given the the compassion that other cricketers are being given today, or the recognition. It can rankle in many ways. I mean, people often say that sometimes you've got yeah. Go ahead.
I'll make you understand. Right, it will rankle, but that's the situation now. I think all sports have have it. Cricket. You can have as many psychologists now and how I say it, life coaches as you are within the game. The situation is still the game. There's only 11 places. It's a doggy world to make it in professional sport. And that is the situation. But in terms of the aftercare, I think Thorpe's situation was a lot of it. I don't think his situation had a lot to do with it. Obviously, he was hurt losing his being dropped for the Ashes. Maybe he doesn't feel that he was probably given the recognition as he should have. I know Surrey did a lot for him as well, but then again, Alex Stewart's the main man. In terms of jobs within the game, there's only so many jobs you can do within cricket. But I think Graham Thorpe's situation, I don't think he's ever recovered from the issue from losing his first marriage. Although he's very, very happy, that's always going to be there. But again, I think that if we were to do like a litmus test on the players who play the professional sport, you'll find probably a lot of professional sportsmen will probably be in the same boat as Graham Thorpe, in that they're under pressure to succeed. They're at the top of their game. The pressures very great to stay where they are. And then when you retire in any walk of life, especially professional sport, the new kids on the block come along. You know, there's probably more ex player, ex professional sportsmen than there are people playing the sport, because that's the your time in the limelight is very short. Sporting careers are a very short career. You're not an IT man, a doctor, or work for a local authority where you can work from the age of 18 up until the age of 65. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You rely very much on your body, and then with the rewards you get the posters of yourself on people's walls. But people forget sports are a very, very ruthless pastime. I think there is a lot better aftercare for a sportsman in itself, but cricket's a unique situation, man. It's very unique, especially where you tour the world. You tour the world, and then you start having a family. You look at Steve Smith. Have you noticed Steve Smith hasn't had any kids yet?
Wow.
Have you noticed that Mitchell Stark and Elisa Healy, even though they've been married, they haven't started a family yet?
Wow.
I'm just saying, aren't I? Stuart Broad started his family late.
Exactly. And there's talk, of course, from gymnastics about how Simone Biles won't want to start a family until she ends her career, and she's already achieved a great deal of things.
And that is the situation. You know, sportsmen these days, like before when we were younger, because they had a lot of money, they could afford to start families very young. But it's a time away from the families, that does hit younger people and younger families. But that's what we're seeing now. We are seeing that with a lot of cricketers. David Warner coached very well with his situation, because his family always come on tour, but his wife's now got a career in the media in Australia, so it coincides with him retiring and even retiring from the one day international. But then again, I think they're trying to kill off one day cricket. Between me and you, they only want T20 and probably Test cricket. But I'm just saying that's the pushback now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Josh Froucher, I haven't heard it. I don't know who he hasn't started a family. Jordan, I don't know if he's got a family or not, but a lot of people now, cricketers, are having their families late.
Yeah. Well, all we can do now, and we are going to start wrapping up, of course, is just try and remind everybody that it is a very serious issue. And I'm really glad that you were able to come on here, Kenny, and speak about all of these things. And I have, of course, thanks to Mr. B and Hanno, put up some links, obviously. And we are, of course, going to... I'll try and share this particular page, obviously, because this is obviously from BACP. And wherever you are in the world, whether you're based in the UK or not, it is exceptionally important that you take some time to try and talk about your issues. Always find a good counselor to talk to. If you're struggling with how you feel, do not bottle it up or face it alone. You've got to reach out or talk to a counselor. It can be a positive step to help your mental health and well-being. And of course, on a somewhat happier note, Thorpe's wife and daughter were talking about how they were not afraid to talk about the stigma of suicide. I mean, it's not even a stigma right now. They were trying to help him get better and trying to protect him, which is why they said nothing. But obviously, now they wanted to share the news a week after his passing. And Thorpe absolutely loved his family. He loved his life. He was a free spirit. And, he just loved doing so many things. But as you agree, Kenny, there was a point where he just decided that maybe it wasn't worth living. His loved ones would be better off without him. And the closer you get to killing yourself, the more withdrawn you end up becoming. But then, this family.
I don't think it's even that. I think what's happened is that it's planned. It's planned. I think it's probably planned. The reason why I say it's planned is that you want to put things in place. You want to make sure that all these people are okay and blah blah. The house is fine, the finances are fine, and then you think, right, they're okay. I can go now. I don't want to be here no more. And I think you look at Gary Speed. The day before Gary Speed took his life, he was laughing and joking on Football Focus with Gary McAllister. The next day, we heard he took his life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's the
absolutely.
thing. You don't. I do think you. I do think that they know it's wrong, but and that they have everything in place. People, you don't have to have no money or be homeless to do things like that. You could have the seemingly happiest life ever, but you be hit by a massive blow in your personal life or work life, and then none of that matters. You just go into sort of if you don't feel like your life's worth something, then it's a battle to make for people to talk to get you better and you to get yourself better. It's a battle, and it's a battle that you'll go through for a long time. I think he had it all.
Absolutely.
He wasn't poor. He had it all. He had a second wife living in Wimbledon. His parents are still there, but you have when you get a blow like that, it's hard to shake off. And I believe that everyone who knows who commits suicide and contemplates doing it know it's wrong. It's wrong. They know they're going to hurt people, but well, it's hard. It's hard not to do the wrong thing, especially when you feel like that.
Exactly. And, we are, of course, going to end it. But let me just first of all say, thank you for coming on. And I'm really glad that you and I were able to talk about this because both of us, of course, are fans of England cricket. We loved watching Graham Thorpe. And this is obviously a very important and pressing thing about which to talk. I've shared some links, obviously, with all of you on the screen. And if you're watching this on playback, do not hesitate to click the chat replay. And you can find these links as well, most notably from bacp.co.uk. And in fact, I'm just about to go away, but we do have our main man, Mr. Jenkins. So, yeah, listen. So this is actually good. This is actually a good time right now because I've actually got to run an errand. But Stevie, if you can just stay on here and take this to the end, and also introduce Kenny as he leaves, that would be good. But Kenny, it's been a pleasure. Yeah. Thank you as always.
Definitely. Well, it's a player that Graham Thorpe's a player that I've admired a lot, and it was an era of cricket which, believe it or not, I actually enjoyed. Cricket. It's probably when cricket was on the BBC One. That's when I enjoyed it. It was,
that iconic theme song, So Limbo.
You know what it is? You know what it is? I look at cricket. I look at football before Sky came along, and I look at cricket before Sky took over. I think cricket was much more enjoyable as a pastime before central contracts and Sky got involved.
Yeah, we weren't winning very much, but it was always a treat to watch and listen to. But anyway, gentlemen, I'm about to take some leave. So, Steve, thanks once again for sending the links, and you can share them as well. But now, as two Middlesex and England fans, you can have your chin wag, and I will see you all very soon.
Yeah, cheers, Manny. Thanks for doing this again, mate. Thank you. Brilliant. Yeah, big up, Kenny. How you doing, my friend?
Yeah, it's just yeah, thanks for having me on because I've got to go in about 5 minutes. But I just want to say thank you personally for organising this because it was actually the right time to do this because, I generally thought that when Graham Thorpe died, I actually thought it was actually a serious illness because we were told before he took the Afghanistan job that he had a significant we thought it was a heart attack. We now know that he tried to take his life, and it's poignant that we know rather than do the tributes, we want to know we segued into other issues within cricket because I want to say it 1,000 times. There is a huge mental health, marriage breakdown, and suicide issue within cricket, which it always going to rear its head, and it's always going to be a point of discussion. Graham Thorpe suffered more free. He's not the first cricketer to take his life.
No, no, yeah, it's been quite a few, isn't it?
Yeah. David Bairstow took his life. Matthew Maynard's son took his life, and these are three high-profile people that've taken their life, and and there's been other cricketers who it's happened to as well. Cricket does have a mental health situation, and I think now what they do now is that you'll find a lot of cricketers now who are just picking and choosing what format of the game they want to play because they get well played now.
Yeah.
And a lot of cricketers, as I said to Manny, they're having their kids late. They're not starting families. Whilst it was a crane, I mentioned a couple of Australian players like Mitchell Stark and Lisa Healy, both married, and Stephen Smith. He hasn't started a family yet.
Yeah.
It's
good to do it when they're ready, isn't it? You got to be ready to do it. Really, let's be honest.
Yeah, I suppose so. But it's the sort. You think about the environment where they're touring and they're going to all corners of the world, and they're married as well. And a lot of cricketing marriages have been casualties of the touring aspects of their careers.
Yeah. It is very important. Obviously, as we know, Graham Thorpe, he looks happy enough, looked content, didn't he? But we all know he's obviously masking that.
They all do. They all do. They all do. When you are thinking of doing that, you have to admit it to yourself. You will tell a few people, but it doesn't matter how much money you have, or you have a lack of it, or whether you're successful in your careers, or you're successful in life. One personal blow can just finish you. It could be, we don't know what a blow is, but it could just end your what I call your willingness to participate in this life.
Yeah.
Money means nothing, and that's the thing. I still think Poppy wouldn't have wanted to do this. He would have known it was wrong, but it was enough, and that's a sad thing. But most importantly, obviously, we'll talk about other things. But what's happened with Ivan Toney? Wasn't anyone want him?
Yeah, your guess as good as mine, man. I ain't got a clue, Ken. I don't know, mate.
He seems like comes across as a sort of person who trains hard, wants to win. Why club's coming in for him? He hasn't got any bad injury records, so what's going on?
Yeah, well, the thing is, he's a great player, he's quality, but I don't like his attitude. I never have, but there we go. He said a lot of stuff about fees and happy with gambling, but
is it? Do you think that thing that he did where he's banned for a long time? Do you think that's kind of put clubs off him?
Possibly, yeah. Well, if you feel like he's got a bad attitude, which he probably has, you can see that. But okay, whether it's his ego, whether he wants to, if he wants to be a big team, fair enough, and maybe he won't do that. Maybe like yourselves or Chelsea or wherever, Spurs or wherever, right? He wants to go. But I still don't like it that he's disrespected us because we paid his wages and he was playing for us. And
I understand. But that's what they do. That's what they do. If you want to force a club's hand, especially you've got he's a situation when he's at 28. He says, why I want out now. If I sign a new contract, I'm helping you get more money. But why I don't know. He's probably thinking, I don't want to wait for Brentford to get £100 million for me to further my career. And I think that's the thing in football. You only have to look at what happened for Conor Gallagher. When the clubs want you out, they act just as ruthlessly as before. Right? I know footballers get paid at King's ransom, but I still believe that when they don't want you, you see the other side. Footballers haven't always earned this big money. Previous to the Premiership, there's been players who've been treated like how do I say it, like an oily rake by clubs.
Yeah.
So it kind of works. It kind of works both ways. The old Tony situation still is bizarre, but again, he will go. But there's going to be a situation where he's probably going to go to Saudi Arabia at this rate.
Yeah. That's where you go to end your career, isn't it? Surely. Not big cricket football over there, is it? It's not.
Anyway, Stevie, I'm gonna have to go now because I've got things to do. But I just want to say thanks for
Yeah, no worries.
Chelsea fans just put he'll take Ivan Toney. Well, I don't know. You're doing a swap deal with Osman. Yeah. For that, and send a couple of players their way. Who knows? Maybe Conor Gallagher might go in that league. But anyway, Steve, thanks so much.
Yeah, no worries.
Later.
You're welcome back anytime, man. You're a legend, mate, and I love you, man. Brilliant.
Thanks a lot,
You're
Stevie.
welcome back anytime, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve. All right, bye.
Cheers, Kenny. Take care, man. Yeah, what a legend. Brilliant bloke. Great man. Glad to have him on today. It was an important show, this, Had to bring this up. It's the way things are going at the moment with men's mental health. It's horrible. And it's brought it to light with Graham Thorpe, of course, ending his own life, sadly. A total legend in the game. Brilliant for us, for England. And it was really sad. I apologise I haven't been on here today, guys. I've been out. I've obviously actually had a job interview to go to. So that's another reason I ain't been on. But those two gents have been amazing. Of course, Manny and Kenny, fantastic stream. They've got immense knowledge, as we know. Especially Kenny. Any time you can have him on your show, you'll have him on because he's amazing, awesome. Talk so much facts and about everything, football, boxing, everything. He's a font of knowledge for it all. So. I got a couple of comments. Obviously, this is, Chelsea fan, by Kenny King, there's Kenny read that. I think I would take Tony at Chelsea 100%. Chelsea fan there. Chelsea fan, I agree with you, Mr. B. It's so sad. Yeah, it is, mate. I'm sorry I'm not putting these comments up at the moment because obviously, I'm actually on my phone, but you'll still see him obviously on online on wherever you are on your PC or phone or whatever you're using, tablet or anything, and obviously on Hanos, of course. I go and sub to him as well. He's got loads of subs, but could always do a few more and. Keep subbing and smashing the likes on mine and his. Be great. Kenny King is a legend. Yeah, you're right, Chelsea fan. He sure is. As I say, apologies I haven't been on today to host, but obviously Manny, I left it in his capable hands. Great bloke, as we know, and fantastic on whatever he does online on people's channels and streams. So. I left it up to him, and I knew he'd do a great job, and he did. Obviously, having Kenny on obviously helps as well. Another legend there on my channel, so it's great to have him on. His debut, and he knows he's welcome back anytime. Absolute pleasure having him on. And wherever we go into next, obviously cricket ones, I would actually be doing more mental health ones. So watch out for them. Plenty more for that. Obviously, I did do one on my football channel. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I done it, but please check that one out. That's great, and make sure you watch this today, and obviously on playback or anything live. And thanks to people that have been in the live chat. That's great, thank you. And check out those links. Mental health, obviously. Please don't suffer in silence. Please try and reach out if you can. And that's great. So obviously, I've got more stuff coming up, and obviously this wasn't really about subs for me today. This is about getting over the message, spotlighting it, highlighting it to people, what's going on with mental health, especially with us men. It's still very hard, even in the day and age we're in today. The way life is, it's still hard for us men, to express our feelings. A lot of the time, it is very, very difficult, because you're a big man, you're masculine, or you got whatever, you got obviously testosterone and pride and ego and whatever, and it is really, really hard still to do that, even in as the way the world is today. It's still very difficult. But anyway, as I say, there are links there. Please go and check them out. Don't get to the situation that Graham Thorpe was in. Please don't ever try and do that. Think about ending your life. Your life is precious. You're only here once on this earth. So please try and make the most of your life, and don't end it cheaply or whatever. Don't feel like you can't ever get to a stage where you can't carry on. It's all very important. But as I say, thanks to everyone that has been watching, and also on Hanno's channel and everything as well, and on mine. And hopefully you've enjoyed it, and you'll get plenty of information from this, and it definitely helped for your lives. And and obviously I'm also on a preview tomorrow on my football channel, Mr. B Hiver Football Chat. Doing one with the Crystal Palace fan, of course, Rich, Eagle-Eyed Football. He's joining me on my channel tomorrow. Then the preview for the Bees versus Palace on Sunday. Hopefully we can start with a win. I'd love to start with a win or draw or whatever would be great, but a win would be fantastic. But Palace are a top team, quality team, got a good manager there in Glasner now. They have lost to Elise, of course, but still a very good team. We won't take them lightly. We know what they can do. We don't disrespect them at all. But obviously, join me for that. My preview tomorrow on Mr. B Hiver Football Chat, and obviously on keep checking this out. Mr. B Talks England Cricket. It's all down there. Mr. B for Life 182, and obviously subscribe to Mr. B Hiver Football Chat and Mr. B Talks England Cricket. But as I say, thanks to everyone again, and this has been a great stream. So obviously until the next one, as I say, I'm also actually before I go, I'm also on a stream tonight. On Oris prediction stream for the Premier, game week 1. Obviously starting tomorrow with Man United and Fulham, and then of course the whole weekend and next Monday there are matches. So in the top one, the big one, the Premier is back again. Thank God. Can't wait. Ever since the Euros finished, I really wanted this to come back and do this, the season to start again in the Premier. So thank God it is. But yeah, I'm on Oris stream tonight at 8 o'clock. Please check that out. It's prediction 1. But anyway, for the time being, guys, I am out of here. And thanks once again to Manny and Kenny. Show your appreciation and love. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.